everyone. It is new moon in Gemini today, and one of the questions that I just read in response to that on my Moon Woman page was, what do we do about psychic attack? And look, this is something which can surface more around dark and new moon in Gemini. So, in our modern culture, particularly in the West more so, people don't tend to acknowledge energy transactions. We only tend to acknowledge that reality exists on a physical level, or a mental level or an emotional level, but not an energetic level. And so when we acknowledge the energetics of life, it is, a reality that people who aren't conscious of how they're using their energy are engaging in, what would be called traditionally black magic, which is, like giving someone the evil eye, is giving them what we call in Australia a dirty look, like sending them daggers, that has an energetic effect. Or it might be gossip, which is another shadow of Gemini, which you may have witnessed or been exposed to in the lead up to this new moon today. So, gossip is when, we are, spelling with our words, we create spells. And so if we're speaking negatively about somebody else, that's another form of psychic attack. So it's not just, the sort of Hollywood version of psychic attack where, it's a woman cackling over a cauldron, So, and of course we do it to ourselves, if we're unconscious with the affirmations that we're speaking about our life. But, if we repeat a negative thought form over and over again, then that becomes in a more solid form, more of an entity, or if we engage in, drugs or plant medicines more as a form of recreation than, or just chasing an experience, rather than really taking the time to integrate each journey where our consciousness is completely expanded. Women are actually at risk every time we go into labor. And also when we menstruate. So when we go between the worlds, when we drop in to the underworld, and Kali, Ma, Lilith, the archetypal energy who presides over the base chakra, that is the underworld. I was saying this to my sisters in our cyber red tent last night, now that I'm here in Bali, that one of the teachings that came through me recently when I was teaching the rites of passage blood mysteries for women was that the three worlds we journey through with our chakras. So, for instance, in our maidenhood, we're doing a descent through the underworld, and the archetype that we're exploring is Lilith, is Kali Ma, is the dark feminine. We're being exposed to the shadow. And when that's unconscious, it can be terrifying, because we see ourselves as the princess, one who doesn't do anything wrong. And so when shit goes down, it's like, the universe is so cruel. But, I actually pulled the card Owning the Shadow this morning, and I did the meditation in the book, and, I saw my inner glutton with a head like a pig, just like shoveling in food, which is, yes, a part of me that I've already acknowledged fully. But, and then the part of me that can use guilt to manipulate others. But the most powerful insight came when I actually turned directly behind me in my mind's eye, and I saw that sort of black horned, being, which is a bit terrifying. It's not like Maleficent, in the movies. And the message that came with that was, this is the part of you that has sought absolute power and control in relationship out of fear. But when you connect with the light, you feel love, you feel safe. And so that's how you can avoid that subconscious patterning sabotaging relationships. So, you know, I was journaling. I mean, I do a practice every morning to stay connected to the light. And the more that we do that, those fear-based shadow aspects in ourselves are less likely to engage with the shadow aspects of others, which then can result in shadow games, shadow boxing, so psychic attacking each other. So if you're not already doing a practice, you know, look, it doesn't matter really what you do. We've all walked so many different paths. I kind of liken it to creating a recipe, you know, that, you know, my yoga practice, it's something that I've sort of pieced together. So I'll do Kundalini Kriyas to get the fire raised, and then I'll do more yin yoga to cool, to create soma, and really attuning to what my body, my back in particular, needs. And then I'll do an energetic practice, a gratitude practice. And in that, every day I visualize the violet flame, which, you know, it transmutes fear-based, thick, dark thought forms, emotional miasmas. So I just visualize that a foot beneath my energy body, spiraling up through my field, and then coming all the way up to the soul star a foot above me, which is, we have an earth star and a soul star chakra below and above our regular 7 stargates, which you can kind of see there on the wall behind me there, the yantra. This is my new pad, moved in yesterday. So I love it. So one of my students gifted me a yantra identical to that at home, and I had to give it away before I moved, and I move in here and there's one. It's just, yeah, love it. Anyway, that's an aside. So then what I do is I telepathically, in my thoughts, I cast out any imposing energies, and I cast out any imposing intentions, and I delete any and all effects of those intentions. So I do that every single morning. And then I put myself in a selenite pyramid, not physically. I don't have a big selenite pyramid, would be very nice. But you know, the power of the energetics we can intend. We don't need to spend God knows what that would cost. So to visualize yourself in, you know, a selenite pyramid, and I put in gold on all 4 sides, the Om symbol and the words only love and light shall pass. And then something I've been adding in just this last week actually is I then visualize a glass of water that has had, oh God, what's it called? Opalite, the crystal opalite, which is not even I don't even think it's a naturally occurring stone, but I had an experience with some Tia Marie's healers here this week that used that to help clear energies in me. And what they did was they just put opalite in a glass of water and did, you know, prayers over it. But opalite, it has all the colours of the rainbow, and it's a very, very clear stone. And then he gets out his, you know, like his smartphone, puts the torch on, and shines that from the other side of the glass to amplify all the colours in the water. So, you know, and then I was asked to drink that, and he poured some on my crown and then literally washed my body with it. So I've been doing that as part of my energetic practice every morning as well now. So for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, this is, you know, the new moon before winter solstice. It doesn't get any deeper and darker than this. So, you know, just be mindful that if you are feeling very contracted, very fear-based, or perhaps depressed, if there's unexpressed grief or rage that needs to come out. But, you know, this is when, like the 12 dancing princesses, we spiral down into the absolute depths of our subconscious, right into, you know, the sort of the Pandora's box, or if you're familiar with the myth of Ishtar and Nana, you know, journeying down to reclaim the parts of us that we've denied. And that can be not just, you know, the boogeyman. I'm reminded of the Powerpuff Girls and the boogeyman who likes to boogie. Anyway, good to laugh at the shadow too, you know. But also our genius, you know, the parts of us that maybe we've downplayed and we haven't really seen our full divinity, our full light. That can be locked down in the underworld. So today's a very powerful day to just take yourself through a guided meditation where you turn to face what is directly behind you. What do I need to own? What do I need to see in myself? And then, consciously integrate that by journaling or drawing it. But getting back to psychic attack, number one, I would say keep your frequency high. So doing a daily practice, to connect above and below, and, reclaiming sacred space. New moon is the ideal time to clear your space energetically, So I moved in here yesterday and it was like every surface was grotty, and it's like, that holds energy from the previous people that have been in here. So I cleaned every surface and then, created altars, and then I did my own energetic work. So I, with the crystal grid that I set up, I expanded that again using my mind's eye, using creative visualization and speaking my intent telepathically, and created a huge six-pointed star as a multi-dimensional crystalline temple of light in here. And I was using toning, using sound, I was using chimes into all the corners to clear the space. So if you're in a high frequency space, there's, less chance of psychic attack. Now the other thing is, if you're still cycling, if you're a female, then you can use your menses. The alchemical properties in it contain great power for marking out your boundaries, for psychic protection. So, in my Red Tent course, I speak about, how to return our blood to the earth. I mean, it's, it's so rich as a food to go back to the earth, and it's a beautiful offering, given all the ways that we're taking from Mother Earth and not giving back to her. The more her daughters, return their moon flow to the earth, it's like the more we're supporting her to return to Eden, to this beautiful garden state. So, but, just like a wolf marks its territory with its urine, and a lot of the indigenous cultures understood that, and the tantriques, that all of the fluids of our body hold incredible alchemical properties. And, because we've been stuck in mind and in shame about the body, it's, it's unthinkable we could possibly use the fluids of our bodies in a magical way. So, putting a bit of your blood around the parameters of the house is a great way to help maintain psychic boundaries. You can also invoke, guardians at the 4 directions. If you're in the southern hemisphere, we have to always work with the gravitational spin. I did a video on this a while back, I think in January, because here in Ubud, I keep going to ceremonies and people are invoking for the northern hemisphere rather than the southern hemisphere, which is really, for our energy field. So if you're in the southern hemisphere, you just follow the trajectory of the sun. So where the sun rises is the east, at midday it's north, at sunset it's west, and at midnight it's in the south. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's sun rises in the east, but because you're up the top, the sun is full in the south, and then at sunset it's in the west, and at midnight it's in the north. So that's if you're invoking guardians for psychic protection, it's really important that we consider the gravitational spin of the poles of the 2 hemispheres so that we don't sort of discombobulate energetically. Playing sacred music, also singing sacred chants, or just making up songs, toning. When we sing, when we use our throat chakra, we strengthen our auric field. So if you're ever feeling a bit wobbly energetically, that's a great way, to use the power of your own voice. But I suppose the biggest thing that I would say is stay in the heart, because the heart chakra governs the middle world, okay? So the crown governs the upper world, the heart, the middle world, the everyday world, which is where Demeter, the inner mother, sits, and the green man, the inner father, the queen, the king. And then the base chakra is the underworld. So, you know, the idea is that just like Maiden Mother Crone or Night King Sage, we are able to simultaneously be in the three worlds. But, you know, Christ taught to stay in the heart, which, you know, so long as we're in the heart, so long as we're breathing, we can observe the shadowlands of the underworld. We can experience the ecstatic intensity of oneness with the divine in the upper worlds. But we don't get pulled off like a spinning top. You know what I mean? We're able to just simultaneously, like the triple-faced goddess who is all three, the maiden in the underworld, the mother in the middle world, and the crone in the upper world. We're able to be in all three worlds simultaneously. And for the guys, the equivalent is the knight, the king, and the sage. So, you know, in the Eastern traditions, they're always honouring the triple god as Krishna, Vishnu, and Shiva, but not so much, you don't hear of the triple goddess, whereas in the Celtic tradition, in that indigenous tradition, we hear very much about the triple goddess, but not so much the triple god. So it's nice to acknowledge both. So, yeah, and look, if you believe someone has put a hex or a curse on you, you give it power. Okay, so what we focus on grows. So I don't, you know, advocate if you're doing your psychic protection practice coming from a place of fear, because all you're then doing is affirming I'm not safe. Yeah, do it from a place of honoring your temple. So I'm just in the wind. There's like 3 windows around me. So yeah. So yeah, do it from a place of love, and I would suggest that with the daily practice anyway. If you're coming at it from, oh, I must do my practice from solar plexus, from the rational mind, like must have a discipline, then the ego, the kid in us, is just going to go, F you, you know, I'm going to have a coffee and a croissant instead. But if we come from a place of self-love, like I'm coming to this practice because I love myself, I love my body, I want to honor my temple, and I know that if I start my day from this place, anchoring my higher self to make all my decisions each day, embodying divine union, divine wisdom, divine healing and truth, divine acceptance and love, divine will, divine play and joy, and divine passion at the 7 gates, then we, you know, our energy follows the intention that we set. So the more that we become this clear crystalline vessel to anchor heaven on earth, yes, it's true that the light then can attract shadow, you know, particularly lost souls. A lost soul is somebody who may have had a sudden death and hasn't been able to reconcile and move on, you know, to the light, or somebody that feels like they have unfinished business. So if they've left behind a young child, for instance, and they feel like, you know, they need to be still here in spirit. So I didn't mean to get into all of this, but I'll just go wherever it goes. Then, you know, again, it's not to be afraid of them. The word ghost originally meant guest. And, you know, the Samhain, as it became then known as Halloween, was, you know, we would set a place and make the meals for our ancestors who'd crossed over the veil. They were welcomed. So, you know, like the 13th fairy in Sleeping Beauty, if they're not welcomed to the table, then they actually create more of a problem. Whereas if we welcome in our ancestors to help with our healing journey, you know, they absolutely show up, because free will is one of the universal laws. You know, they can't help unless we ask them. But if we ask them in, then, you know, it's in their interest to heal the lineage as much as it is ours. And, you know, the Africans understood that we heal together, hence the family constellations work, which is incredibly powerful if you ever get the opportunity to do that. So, yeah, I think it's important, given the number of people that are using drugs as a recreation, to understand that it really expands our energy field. And then if we're not, cloaking ourselves. You can put yourself visually in a cloak of violet flames with the symbol of Wotan's cross, which is just the even cross inside a circle as a sigil all over your energetic cloak. Good to wear if you're going into a shopping centre or public transport too. And even doing things like, just using your mind's eye to create a spiral of violet flames before you sit down on a train where someone else has sat. So you're not sitting in the energy that they've just left behind. I speak about in my book, Creating Sacred Union and Partnerships, how to clear your womb in between partners so that there's not all this, psychic residue there. If we're not really retracting our sexual energy consciously from an ex-partner, and that goes for men and women, and revoking any vows that we took, and really setting them free, cutting any cords, then the woman who was the catalyst for this video today, said that there was a man that wouldn't let go, and so he was getting a bit aggro towards her, and she could feel it on a psychic level and wanted advice. So if we do the sort of appropriate energetic clearing in between lovers, or if there's somebody that you've had an altercation with, really good to start on the energetic level, because that then supports both parties to be able to just be responsible for what is ours in that, rather than being enmeshed with the other person. And on that, it's why in my books on sacred union, I sort of raise the question about sex as a form of recreation, casual sex, because when we lie with someone sexually, all of our nadis, all of our inner sort of meridians of light become completely enmeshed, especially if we open on all gates. So, this can be why it can be hard to let go of an ex-partner. And so do check that out. The first time I did a womb clearing energetically on myself, oh my God, the amount of people in there was just terrifying. Because, I'd had one partner that had 1,000 lovers, so it was pretty crowded in my womb. But I speak about that in the Sacred Union book, and just clearing that out. So, stay in the heart, do a daily practice, make sure you clean your home, your temple space, ideally every new moon, using sound, using visualization, creating altars and crystal grids, using sacred chants and music, and, forgiveness as a practice as well, because the more that we can journal and be grateful for the hard lessons that we've learnt with other people, the more we can let them go with grace and love. And to forgive is to give love, is to wish them well. So if we're harboring resentment, if we're not forgiving, then, that is keeping us in a dark, energetic, sort of holding pattern with somebody. So, it's good to have conversations about the energetic realm so that we can be more conscious. Oh, one final tip. I was reminded that the ancient Greeks, if they were doing a journey between the worlds, such as, going into labor for a woman, they would make sure her hair was unbound, and they would remove jewelry and make sure there weren't any knots in the room, because didn't want any energy bound up in the underworld. So, and the role of men in labor is to be psychic warriors for the woman, so that she's not picking up flotsam and jetsam from the astral while she's really open and expanded, which is something that leads to a lot of postnatal depression. So I will be preparing men to be Jedis, to be psychic warriors in the Grail initiation rites for men, which was done in the ancient world to prepare men to be psychologically and emotionally mature enough for conscious union with women, or the feminine and a man, and to father. So the first blood rite for men was done by men, initiating them into manhood, but then the second rite to face the dragon was to face the dragon queen, the Magdalene, the high priestess, who would initiate men into finding their other half, their feminine within. So I'm very, very excited to be putting that together right now. We'll be doing the first one in Australia for winter solstice next year. Myself and a beautiful man who is a shaman in his own right, who's just, yeah. And then alternating hemispheres. So, you know, we need to acknowledge the energetics of this realm if we're going to shift all the shadow that has literally eclipsed our planet. And for those that are sensitive, they will then be more likely to feel their darker thoughts and emotions at new moon, whereas the more we each individually look at our shadow, integrate those disowned pieces, embrace them, love them like a mother, bring them into the heart, then we help to heal the corruption and all the unconscious behaviors on the planet, since we're all fractals of the one consciousness. So I hope that's great food for thought for you today on this new moon in Gemini. I know it's a full-on content to be discussing, but you know, Gemini brings up magic. It's Hermes, it's Thoth, it's, you know, that archetype. And so the more we understand it, the more we make it part of the conversation, the less we need to fear it. And we can, yeah, consciously use our energy to support ourselves and each other. So have a beautiful new moon. It's a great day to seed intention for clear communication, for expanding your network, your sphere of influence, for manifesting your absolute divine destiny. So with that, have a beautiful day, and yeah, look forward to speaking to you again. Please feel free to put your comments below, and if this was helpful to you, then feel free to share it. Ciao.